Warm welcome to everyone. Good afternoon. So the topic that we are going to discuss today, so let me first introduce my guests. Just on my right, on my left is Dr. Ramesh Chand, member Niti Aayog, then followed by Professor Dr. C.S.C. Shekhar. He is a professor at Institute of Economic Growth. And then the very well-known Ajay Vaid Jakar, who is a eminent chairman Bharat Krishak Samaj and also practicing agriculturist, as we can call him. And he tries to introduce himself as the voice of farmers, as we say. So as we start, welcome to every one of you. Dr. Chand, the topic that we are discussing here is that is India's agriculture, is agriculture India's strength or weakness? And I don't know whether we can, I don't know, it's always been a relevant topic, and this is the most right time to speak about the subject as it is. So let me start with Dr. Chand first with you, and then I'll come back to all three of you with the same question. Whether is India's agriculture its strength or weakness? Dr. Chand, your views for it.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Well, I have written on it. Those who have read my writing, I think they know what kind of answer I am going to give to this question. I am thoroughly convinced that agriculture was India's strength, it is India's strength, and it will remain as India's strength. Why I am saying so? That is based on very large number of reasons. When we talk about future, there is a big article published in Sanjeev's newspaper under the title Reimagining Role of Agriculture, where I talked about how agriculture will become more strong in future. Now coming specifically to your question that on what basis I am saying that agriculture has remained and is India's strength. First of all, I would say that in case of agriculture, whatever mechanization you do, still labor remain the major input. Right. So I feel that the abundance of labor in India, very large percent of population still engaged in agriculture. So India has a labor advantage, and that advantage is huge. The second is that world has now started talking about food system, agri-food system. Before that they talked about farming system, cropping system. But in India, since time immemorial, we have followed mixed crop livestock system.
Right.
In some parts of the country, it is getting separated, but largely you find that anybody doing crops also has livestock. Largely, there are some people who don't have. But largely we followed mixed livestock crop system, and they are complementary to each other. There is no time, otherwise I can elaborate it that how they are complementary to each other. Third is that you just find that though we have some specialization pockets, but still you find that overall agriculture in India is quite diversified.
Right.
So when we talk of natural farming, those kind of things, ecological farming, the elements about which they talk, they are integral part of farming which has been followed in case of India. The fourth, and this is last reason I would like to give, India's farmer respond to signals very promptly.
Right.
Even if they are marginal farmer, small farmer, we may be feeling, no, small farmer cannot make use of modern technology, modern inputs. All surveys show the adoption of modern technology, use of modern input on per acre basis is higher at small farmer than at large farmers.
Okay.
So that is another strength in case of India, that smallholder farmers in particular are more responsive to market signals, but overall you find that agriculture in India is strongly responsive. There are some weaknesses, maybe in the second part I will come to it, but overall I feel the strength of agriculture are much more than what are its weakness in case of Indian agriculture.
Right. So if I can just sum up, we were a Krishi Pradhan Desh, and we take pride in the fact that we still consider ourselves to be as a Krishi Pradhan Desh. Dr. Shekhar, how do you respond to this? Means is it a strength or weakness from the point of view of growth, from the point of view of its contribution to GDP, from the point of view of declining share in contribution to GDP? How do you see the sector overall? Is it in the current context, as I'm saying?
In fact, I largely agree with Professor Ramesh that it has been our very great strength in overcoming the food shortages of the mid-60s and continuing to, in fact, a large country, populous country like India is food surplus today. In fact, we are exporting a lot of food to the world market. So we have come from a stage of food scarcities in the 1960s, and that's the biggest strength. And that continues to be so. Because in many countries, actually, the focus is shifting away from agriculture, and the world needs food. So India, if it actually leverages its advantages, it's going to be a major player in the world market. Having said this, I would just add one qualification. Although for the country as a whole, the agriculture sector has been a strength and it continues to be so, but for people who are engaged in that, who are small and marginal farmers, for 90% of them actually belong to the small and marginal category. For them, this has not been such a very good activity in terms of income that they earn from that sector. So in that sense, there is a lot that needs to be done, both from policy as well as implementation angles. And I think that's where I'll stop.
Right. Here I would like to bring Ajay, means where Professor Shekhar leaves it is that it's a strength maybe for the country, and from the point of view of that we have become much more self-sufficient in lots of foods. But from the people who actually matter in agriculture, that is the farmers, it's not a strength. How do you respond to the overall question, whether it's a strength or a weakness for the India's agriculture?
One of the things that Shekharji said was that I agree with what both of them have said, but that's half the story. So I'm just going to discuss the other half. Two things I disagreed with was, one thing was that you said that India is a food surplus country. I personally think that India seems to be food surplus because the people can't afford more nutritious food. They can't afford fruits, they can't afford vegetables to that extent that we should be eating.
Right.
And that's why we seem to be nutritious. There are other reasons why climate change will impact that feeling. The other thing is, yes, we are proud. As farmers, we are proud, but as farmers, we are hurt also because how we're being treated by government policy.
Right.
But to bring it into context, I think so, policymakers have selected memory loss. They have selected amnesia in the sense that to understand the issue of if it's a strength or weakness, you got to try and compare farmers on one side and government employees on one side. You know, this is the elephant in the room that even Business Standard is not asking. And I think so, you should be asking in the next Manthan, is this 8th pay commission? And I think as a farmer, I must bring it up because this is how I'll be able to explain and answer your question. 45% of Indians dependent on agriculture, that's around maybe 65 crore people. 60 to 70% of them earn less than 10,000 rupees a month.
Right.
And if you take out non-agriculture income, only 85% of people earn less than 10,000 rupees a month. On the other hand of the spectrum, you have the 8th pay commission, which is going to decide salaries, increase salaries for 50 lakh government employees and 65 lakh government pensioners. And there could be some government employees and pensioners in the room. I don't envy you at all. I just regret my own fate of the people whose opinions I'm trying to address. Now, and there are 1 crore employees, I guess, in all the state governments put together who will also at some stage or the other get benefit of these pay commission hikes. And the states normally enforce this when the elections are due because it's like an election swap to them. Now, if by what you read in Business Standard and other newspapers, you will have a fitment factor of 2.8. So a mid-level employee of the government, which starts off at 35,000, his salary is going to increase to 1 lakh rupees a month. And on the other hand, you have farmers who will have a salary of, let's say, 10,000 rupees a month. And that 1 lakh rupees a month comes with pension, it comes with medical leave, it comes with all those added criteria to it. And when the 8th pay commission comes into effect in a few years, the salary burden that will, the new burden on the governments of the salary would be like a 1 lakh crore rupee shock to the government. So what happens is when onion prices rise, potato prices rise, tomato prices rise by a few rupees, the government will not allow us to, have the value of markets. They don't allow markets to function transparently and they don't allow a price discovery. But जब government employee का आता है, 1 lakh crore दे दिया, don't even think twice about it. The RBI will not comment on inflation. The finance ministry and the finance secretary won't comment on inflation. But onion के लिए every RBI meeting, something like this comes up. So this is why I say that agriculture, yes, it is a strength, but how government policy has played on farmers is the weakness of the farming community. And not only that, let me just add this. I mean, I know we are running out of, we have time. Is what happens when Bharat becomes Viksit in 2047? Using the same yardstick of the pay commissions of the last few decades, if you apply the same for the next 2 decades, till we get Viksit Bharat, the same employee who was getting 35,000 this month is going to be getting 8 lakh rupees in 2047. You think farmers' income will increase from 10,000 rupees to whatever figure? It's not going to increase. So we are living in a world where we are not being treated fairly, and that is the weakness of the system. I just want to put it at rest.
I'll come on this to Dr. Chand. He mentioned a very relevant point that it is the agriculture of your country is a strength, but not the agriculturist. For them, the income haven't risen, and we have spoken about it a lot of times in the past as well. It's the income which is a main determining factor, which is holding back the farmers from pushing up. Do you think it's a fair assessment that yes, we are self-sufficient in food, we are self-sufficient in a lot of crops, but when it comes to income of farmers, it hasn't grown in the proportion that it should have been?
Well, as far as income and economic condition of farmers are concerned, there are wide variation across the states, but if I have to give some assessment at national level, farmer neither come at the top nor they are in the bottom.
Okay.
They are come somewhere in
the between.
If middle is divided in 2 categories, lower middle.
Okay.
The poverty and all other things, you find that they are more concentrated, low income among labor household, whether it is agriculture labor household or non-agriculture labor household, rural agriculture labor or urban labor. So they are the people who come at the bottom. As I said, there are big variation. There is a state from which Mr. Ajay Jakhad comes. Income of a farmer is more than income of a non-farmer. We don't acknowledge these kind of things. In state of Punjab, share of agriculture in state economy is, I think, around 28%, and labor employed in agriculture is only 25 or 26%.
Yes.
I feel that those, now there are problems with agriculture sector there, but they are the model that agriculture can be transformed in a way where income of farmer is not less than a non-farmer,
Right.
rather it is higher than what is income of a non-farmer. Now looking at from policy angle that what is being done to address this issue of disparity between income of farmer and income of a non-farmer, if we look at last 10 years, the experience of last 10 years in Indian agriculture has been unique
Right.
in 3 respects. That is what differentiates the historical experience of agriculture, farmer income in the past and in the last 10 years. If I say too much, you will say that he is a member Niti Aayog, so he is to say this, but I have published this paper in EPW. What are those 3 things which have happened in last 10 years, which never happened before? One is, if you look at growth rate of agriculture in whatever way you measure it, in the last 10 years, the growth rate of Indian agriculture in real term is highest.
So 10 years period, you're taking 11, 12.
From 14, 15 to 23, 24.
24,
Okay?
okay.
So it comes to 4% by whatever method, logest, average annual rate, you measure by whatever method you want to measure. It can go little higher, little lower, but it will be around 4%, which never happened for 10 years before. 10th 5-year plan, 11th, 12th, they had target of 4% growth rate, but they never achieved it.
Okay.
And it has been achieved. This is the first major change which has happened. Second, if you look at prices of agriculture produce relative to non-agriculture, the prices of agriculture produce in last 12 years, if you take 11, 12 as a base, have risen 30% more than non-agriculture.
Okay.
That adds to income of the farmers.
Right.
If you combine these two and factor in, again this has happened first time since 1947, that income of farm sector have grown at same rate as GV of non-farm sector. Again it happened for the first time. I think if we want, if the past trend of labor declining in agriculture, which started after 2001, was continuing even in the last 10 years, then income of farmer would have risen faster than income of non-farmer in India in last 10 years. But another phenomena has set in India, where again I would say it's not that agriculture is a problem, non-agriculture is a problem there. That is that shift of labor which was happening from agriculture to non-agriculture. The latest PLFS data shows that that movement has stopped. Rather, there is small increase in number of people who are working in agriculture. So when you find denominator is increasing, then you just find that those increase in growth, acceleration in growth, higher prices, translating in terms of higher growth in farmer income than income of non-farmer category has not happened. Otherwise, that would also have happened.
Okay. So, Dr. Shekhar, I want to know from you, Dr. Chand mentioned very relevant points. One obviously the shift that was happening from agriculture to non-agriculture, that process has slowed down, which is why the growth hasn't, which is why the income growth, it has happened, but not to the proportion. There is a talk which also a lot of people are writing. Dr. Chand has also written some this thing that, and our economic survey a few years back did talk about the shift which was happening from agriculture to non-agriculture because of manufacturing and services growing, which is the normal pace of where the economy should be moving towards, is not happening so much so in the case of India. I think one of our panelists in yesterday's session also mentioned that in the last 10 years block that has not happened. So we need to rethink our strategies and rethink our ways to keep people engaged in farming and make farming profitable. Do you think that's a way to go about, or the shift should happen from farming to non-farming as we grow up over the value chain?
My answer is both yes and no. Yes and no. In the short run, there is no alternative to actually trying to increase the profitability of agriculture in the short run.
Right.
But over medium or long term, you have to take people out of agriculture. Let me explain it a little bit more. Suppose a farmer is earning, say, 100 rupees per acre, and he has, say, 3 acres of land. So his income becomes 300 rupees total income from the farm. And if he has 3 people engaged in farming, then it will become 100 rupees.
Right.
So if one of them actually moves out, then 300 divided by 2 will become 150. So the agricultural income, so to say, will increase. So that's the idea. Why do you want people to move out of agriculture? Because 90% of your farms are belonging to small and marginal.
Yes.
There's either you have to increase the farm size, as I have said, 100 into 3. So you have to take that 3 into make it 5 or 6, which appears a little difficult now. So the other alternative is to take people out of agriculture to higher productive or more paying jobs outside agriculture. Then the question comes, as Professor Rameshan rightly said, many of the problems seem to lie in the non-agriculture sector, where the growth is not happening as much as it should, or we had hoped for earlier. That is not happening that way. Number two, there is another issue there. Actually, people moving from agriculture to non-agriculture need certain basic skills to be absorbed in those sectors. Like Amartya Sen has written right back in 1995 that it is going to be a drag on our economy going forward if we do not have the appropriate skills and education. This was in 1995 he wrote.
Right.
So I think we are seeing some part of it because the people who are engaged in agriculture, and Professor Ramesh has rightly pointed out the problem of labor. The labor who are engaged in agriculture are of, they are mostly illiterates or semi-illiterates. And they cannot be absorbed into any other sector than a sector like construction. They can't really move into other higher paying sectors. So not only the growth in non-agriculture sector, but also the skilling, education, these things have to happen so as people are encouraged to sort of move out of agriculture.
Right.
But in the long run, there is no escape from actually.
So it should
taking
not be
people
that they're
out of
moving from agriculture to become Manrega laborers. Their skilling
No.
has to be there. They
Exactly.
have to be moved up the value chain.
Manrega is a safety net.
Yes.
It's not a
Yes.
long run.
So Ajay, I would like to come to you on this. This was a talk during the farmers' agitation also. I think there was some time that the government wants to move people away from agriculture to non-agriculture. They make people, farmers, turn into laborers and other things. Do you think this is a fair assessment that people should be sticking around with farming or they should be moving out? And if they want to stick around, do we have the right remunerative structure for them that they will be sticking around, or they are still the low paying things that we have in agriculture for the farmers, from the point of view of farmers?
No, I absolutely agree that we need to find more better employment opportunities for farmers, and I think if those opportunities are available, 99% of farmers would leave farming today and go. But those opportunities don't exist. Okay. So the question is not that if you want to move farmers, it's a tricky question, because if I say yes, then farmers say, ye nikalna cha raha hai. The answer is that you need to give them a choice, an option. They should not be forced to move out of agriculture because agriculture is not profitable.
Right.
And irrespective of what the government does, I am of the opinion that you cannot make agriculture profitable for 85% of the farmers who are smallholder farmers, irrespective of what you do. So the government has a task at which it is not succeeding, and you need to find those employment opportunities. Or you need to support farmers by services, by making sure the healthcare, the education costs, the public transport, we need to focus on that. We don't need to focus on cash transfers and stuff like that, because that is not going to change their livelihoods.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a much more complex issue, and we live in a country where, and by the way, Niti Aayog comes out with very good documents, and Ramesh Chandji has come out with a very good document where, how I interpret that document is that 45% of farmers have zero growth or negative growth because they're only growing cereals, and that's a fact. What I as a farmer think should be happening, other than having a moratorium on the 8th pay commission for 10 years, is that we need an agriculture policy in this country. We don't have an agriculture policy for nearly 30 years now.
Right.
I mean, you have a policy for everything under the sun. I mean, every time I'm seeing advertisements in Business Standard and other newspapers about some associations, FICCI, CI, coming up with policy documents and stuff like that. But agriculture policy nahi hai. 45% of India is involved in agriculture. The distressed part, so we need a policy. And I strongly urge Niti Aayog, I strongly urge economists, because government listens to you, to ask that there is a value in having a policy. And that this is my two suggestions I'm
What
giving.
could be the contours of that policy? Should be a farmer-centric policy? Should be focused on boosting farmers' income? What should be the broad idea behind such a policy?
I mean,
that in next 5 years we should see the
No,
growth.
a policy cannot be made for 5 years. A policy has to be made with a vision for 20 years or something.
Okay.
And it has to fulfill the goals of the nutrition security of this country, and also talk about other issues that can happen.
Okay.
But it needs to be a holistic policy. As a farmer, I would say that the constituents of the committee that makes the policy has to be very carefully decided. It cannot be a government bureaucracy sitting and deciding policy because they've already messed up everything for the last 20 years, 30 years. It can't be left to economists because they will think of facts in terms of figures. And this needs a wider approach. You need sociologists, you need anthropologists making a policy. You need all kinds of people. You need climatologists, looking at how climate change will impact. But these are two demands and things that I'm leaving at the Business Standard Manthan today. One is to seriously consider a moratorium on the 8th pay commission. I hope you put it down in your print when you print it tomorrow, because nobody does. And the second is that the country needs an agriculture policy.
So next time we don't get Dr. Chand as our guest for that. So Dr. Chand, there's one question which Ajay also put it, that we need a policy on agriculture. You and Professor Shekhar both were part of a very fabulous report, I understand, which predicted the food grain demand supply for last 30, 50 years, I think next 30 years. That also is a very could be a very base for which a policy can be developed, where you very categorically state that it is cereals which don't need much to be cared, but obviously our pulses, oil seeds, and I think milk was the third item where we were looking at a shortage under the next 30 years. So do you think if I can merge both what Ajay is saying and what you are also your report, that we need a policy to look at this part of the agriculture where your cereals production and other production does not need much attention, but it is pulses and oil seeds. At the same time, the income of the farmers also grows at a pace which is far more faster than it has been.
Yeah, Sanjeev, I will come to this point, but I feel that a wrong message should not go from what we are talking. So just for sake of better understanding of workforce, I want to share one dimension with you, that why the percent of people working in agriculture in last 7 years has increased.
Right.
It's not that in last 7 years, when we started publishing every year labor data,
Yes.
that employment in non-agriculture sector is not increasing. You see, again, we are a country in transition. Lot of things which have not happened before, they are happening. In fact, there is a paper by Dr. Golder which shows that in manufacturing, the growth of employment is again unprecedented 4%.
Okay, in
So
this 7 years
if
period.
that is the kind of growth in manufacturing in workforce, why the share of labor in agriculture has not declined? Very interesting. You see, India is passing through a demographic transition. The ratio of working age population, 15 to 59 or 65 in total population is increasing. The increase in working age population, which then enter into labor force or workforce, is very fast in last 7 years. Again, more on account of female entering the workforce. The work participation rate of women of working age population was 24% in 17. It has increased to 32% latest data. So you imagine that if that kind of increase is happening in workforce, labor force, then these distribution kind of things are disturbed.
Right.
So it's not that non-agriculture employment didn't increase, but the
No, but
workforce
the
is
counter to that
increasing
is
much
the
faster.
female labor force participation has risen because your source of income has got limited.
80% increase in total workforce is because of increase in number of women. So coming to your other questions, agriculture policy, you see, first of all, it is not that we are operating completely in vacuum.
Right.
ऐसा भी नहीं है.
Right.
There was a agriculture policy during time of Vajpayee Sahab. It is called National Agriculture Policy. It is a 10-page document which doesn't put any number, but just talk of where we should be taking our agriculture. After that, in 2005, National Farmer Commission was set up, which again also
policy,
give something, and some element of it keep coming. Every time you just find that, you see, when 3 new farm law comes, it's a part of the policies, that what is the perception about agriculture, how to make it grow. It is also that you are bringing reform, etc. So that is the kind of things. Now, whenever you make policy, there are so many kind of things which have to be reckoned, short term, medium term, long term. That is to be taken into consideration, and that kind of policy you make not every 10 years, really, where you put vision, etc. Maybe once in 20 years or so. I give you example, like Last time, the barter vision and barter policy document was written under chairmanship of Dr. Hashim. It was in 99. After that, it was not done. Anyway, I took initiative, Ministry of Jal Shakti, they have constituted now task force. We have 2 years time, we are working on it.
Okay.
So this kind of exercise should be done periodically. Should be done periodically. And in between, you can fine tune, you can pick up what is becoming more important, what is the requirement of situation, and then you adjust it accordingly. Now you talked about pulses, you talked about oil
Cereals,
seeds.
yeah.
They have different kind of problems. In case of oil seeds, why we became so much dependent on edible oils? Again, you will be surprised that in most of the post-green revolution, growth rate of India's oil seed production is higher than growth rate of cereal. You see what I am saying? In post-green revolution, in most of the period, India's growth of oil seed is more than what is the growth rate in cereal. Then how come we are exporting cereal and importing edible oils?
Yes.
Because per capita intake of cereal in most of the period, either initially it increased, but after I think 80, either it remained same or it declined.
Right.
Between 12 and 23, it has declined from per capita 11 kg to 9 kg.
Right.
But in case of edible oils, the increase in last 20 years is 300%. Average absorption, according to data, was around 6-7 kg, around 2000, and now it is more than 18 kg. That is what has made India so much dependent on import, because we started consuming too much of edible oils, and Pradhan Mantri ji in Man Ki Baat,
Yeah, he has said
I
that we
think
should
he
cut
said
down.
at least 10% to come karo, if not
Right.
200%. So that is the reason which we also should understand that it's not. So if we want to match demand and supply, efforts are made that let us match demand and supply, then you require different kind of technologies. With indigenous technology, we cannot go for it.
Right.
And world in case of vegetable oil has gone for transgenic,
Yeah.
GMO, but we as a country didn't want to go in that direction. Country is not in a mood to go for that kind of thing. And when government liberalized little bit, then court came into the picture.
Yes.
They said, no, we will not allow even doing trial on all those kind of things. So it is crystal clear that if we want to reduce import dependence for edible oil, either we reduce the consumption or we embrace the technologies which are giving 3 times yields of mustard, sunflower in Western world compared to what is yield in our country. The highest areas in terms of area, oil seed in India is soybean.
Right.
The yield of soybean today is same, but it was in early 70s.
30 years.
It is same. But our growth has happened is because of area. So this is the situation in case of edible oil. As far as pulses are concerned, in fact, last again 12 years, among field crop, pulses have shown very good growth, if you take the average. But in case of pulses, problem is instability. किसी साल में आपका 27 मिलियन टन चला गया, अगले साल में 22 मिलियन टन आएगा. So that is also something which causes more dependence on imports. But again, unless technological breakthrough happened or we are able to increase crop intensity, if you increase your Atmanirbharta in one, the other become the victim.
Right.
Because area expansion scope is very little. So either we increase crop intensity or we increase yield. Those are the kind of options which are
Interventions
being
that
done. We already submitted a report on edible oil. Another report on pulses will be submitted shortly.
So in the edible oil report, you talked about transgenic, that I understand.
I mean, we need technology.
Yes.
You see, otherwise we can't improve this Atmanirbharta.
Right. Dr. Shekhar, coming to you, we are also running short of time. Professor Chand mentioned a lot of things about increasing the income of farmers, obviously shifting from oil seeds, from cereals to oil seeds and pulses. MSP is a very important instrument, and in that respect. And I know it is a tricky question, and unfortunately around the same time we were sitting last year and the same question had cropped up, and the same number of farmers were protesting in some place of the country, were demanding the same thing, that is a legalized MSP. So you have done a lot of studies on how, if you guarantee a certain MSP to minimum support price to certain farmers, the crops, the actual expenditure that the government might incur is, your studies are being quoted at a lot of places. So it's not 2 lakh crore, it's not 4 lakh crore, it's far, far less than that. How do you subscribe to that? Is it a process to ensure that the income of farmers increase, as Ajay says that we need to increase their income, and is it a tool to increase their income, and is legalization an option for that?
Ensuring a remunerative price, whether it is legalizing MSP or not, is a very important thing. But is legalizing the way out? I'm not very sure about that. Okay. Because there are two reasons why I'm saying that. If you throw back your mind, we have enacted this Manrega in 2007 or 8. And under that, the mandatory number of days that needed to be provided to each family was 100 days of employment.
Yes.
And today, even if you look at after 18 years, if you see, the average is still around 50. So legalizing is not going to solve the problem. Now, having said that, how do you ensure MSP to these farmers? So there are different ways of doing that. One is obviously the procurement, which is being done in case of wheat and rice, but that's certainly not going to help, because for procurement, you'll need, first of all, you need storage space. We do not have adequate storage space if we want to legalize MSP for all the crops. Then the next better instrument probably is deficiency payment system.
Right.
Deficiency payment system is something that can work, and the fiscal expenditure also is much lower
manageable
compared to physical procurement and storing and so another issue that gets solved through deficiency payments is that you don't need to worry about storage, you don't need to worry about distribution.
Right.
Because right now we are distributing wheat and rice through the PDS, but we cannot distribute all 23 commodities through that. So deficiency payments is something that can be thought about, and the fiscal expenditure is also much lower. And the third thing that is being talked about is the direct payment system. But I'm not sure, because earlier when I made the calculations a few years ago, 5-6 years ago, the direct payments appeared to be a good option. But now with the increase in cost of cultivation, when I recalculated that using the 22-23 production and also the cost figures, it has shot up quite substantially. I don't think direct payments is
the right option.
Going to help. So deficiency payments looks to be the better one.
So those who in the audience who don't understand certain of the terminologies, deficiency payment is actually the difference between the MSP and the market price that you pay directly to the farmers in case you're not able to pay the MSP. MSP is the benchmark price that the government is the mandated price which is you should be buying a commodity. Ajay, I like to wind up with you. You are the voice of farmers. We have heard a lot of all the arguments for the panelists. Yes, we are entering into a new phase in farming. Obviously, our farming has certain advantages, obviously, and there are lots of disadvantages. Climate, prices, reluctance on part of the new generation to stay into farming, options, diversification options getting limited, imports, inflation, government's mad obsession with keeping prices down. In such a circumstances, how do we move forward so that farming in India becomes a profitable profession, and what you have illustrated certain points, and so that the grudge that the farmers have generally, that we are the neglected in the whole the dynamics, that grudge is no longer there. How should we move forward here? And this happens to be the last word in the panel, and I want you to
Okay. So I think सरकार क्या कह रही है कि ना तो हम आपको टेक्नोलॉजी दे सकते हैं, ना एग्रीकल्चर रिसर्च डेवलपमेंट में खर्चा कर सकते हैं. The expenditure on agriculture research and development in real terms over the last 20 years has gone down. And without technology, without expenditure on research and development, without expenditure on human resources, I don't think so we can progress to the point of where we would be satisfied. That is one part. So that's why I'm saying when we need an agriculture policy, because we need to be able to differentiate between regulation and promotion. When we look at MSP, we look at Bhavantar, we look at direct payments, we look at futures, options, these are all instruments of promotion, but this is not regulation. So when you have an agriculture policy, which is not a piecemeal document that some task force puts up, it is a document which looks at the systems approach of how to improve everything. Today, because it's the last point, I really want to put forward another point which is very worrisome for me, is India's negotiation with the Trump administration in the USA, because they will definitely ask for concessions from India. And we will have to concede something. We have to live in a real world. So what the country needs to think today, what the Ministry of Agriculture needs to think today is ki what are the concessions we are ready to give on the agriculture front. ऐसा ना हो कि Ministry of Commerce या Ministry of Finance forces something down the throat of Ministry of Agriculture.
Right.
You know, ऐसा ही हुआ है. I've seen it over the last 10, 20 years. This is how it happens. So actually, I went to the ministry a week ago and I told them, be proactive. You know, look at which are the Republican states where Trump's party is in power. Look at the states where they would benefit. And proactively give suggestions कि अगर कोई concession देना है तो let us give concessions on these parts.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll be forced to give concessions which we don't want to give, and farmers will be even distressed more. And one of the suggestions that I have to consider is to give it on ethanol.
Right.
ऐसा नहीं है कि सोयाबीन हम वहाँ से ला रहे हैं, पल्सेस ला रहे हैं और ये सब ड्राई लैंड क्रॉप्स ला रहे हैं, वही तो बेचारे किसान पहले ही गरीब हैं और उन्हीं की फसल हम इंपोर्ट कर लेंगे तो उनकी तो फार्म गेट प्राइस कभी मिलेगी नहीं उनको. So we need to, you know, proactively think on this immediately.
Right. I think with this we wind up. We just have two questions, and I think that's the new elephant in the room, the Trump administration's tariff policy. And as they say in agriculture, more things change, more remain the same. So I have just two, I know there are 5 hands, but I have just 2 questions that can be asked. And one can be from the left, one can be from the right, and one gentleman, one lady. Yes, sir, you have been standing. I'll just come to, I know you have been, I'll just come to you. Yeah, please.
Hello sir, I am Sumit Goyal. I am an export consultant. I am a consultant to Punjab government, and I have started my consultancy 5-6 years back, and we are now exporting 100 containers of chili paste from Punjab. So 100 containers means we are procuring around about 16 lakhs metric ton from chili from the farmers from Punjab and from Rajasthan and from MP. So that is the what I feel that
What is the question?
What is the question, sir?
My question is that we have to diversify to the exports also, because within India there is a limited growth from the farmer, and secondly for the transportation and all that thing. So we will be needing some help from the government, so that to transport from the farm to the port, the cost which we are incurring, it's a headache for us, and we are not able to be competitive in that.
Right. So your question is that you need a help from the government. The government should be more proactive in giving help to exporters of agriculture products, right? Anyone from the left hand side? I'll take the questions all together and then we can see. Yeah, one question from the lady. Yeah, I just come to you. I'll just second.
Hello sir, my name is Shrishti. I'm from Assam. So just to give a bit of context, we have seen how war in Ukraine brought about a standstill in Europe's oil and wheat supply. But despite that, even with increase in prices for the commodity, we did not see the hunger index of Europe going very down. It was still average. And in last year's report, Global Hunger Index did indicate that India is still at a serious level, but report shows that we are still at a food surplus. Despite that, it's all about politics and policies because of which we are at that state. So my question to you, Jay sir, is like, what in your opinion should be like 3 major reformation that government should do to ensure that we have our own domestic food security?
Yeah, one more. And I'll,
Sir.
Please ask the question.
Siddharth Roy. and from the chocolate company. I just want to ask directly that can we expect more cocoa formation in India for the target the new range of heights in 2047, because cocoa cultivation can be the great economical growth for India, but we are only on the South India the cocoa cultivation is going on, but still in North India, I am basically from the West Bengal, from the North Bengal, and there the cocoa cultivation is going normally the cocoa saplings are put in the agricultural college of UVKV, that is the Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, that is in Kuch Bihar, and the cocoa after 22 years this tree is given the grade 1 cocoa in this area of agricultural land. So can we more focused on the cocoa cultivation?
His question is cocoa can be a diversification. One more from Mr. Tyagi and then we finish up, because my session is over and there are other guests waiting.
I have a question for the panel. Just to ask the question, I will inform you that in the parliament recently there has been a question discussed where outstanding loans against farmers was discussed, that what kind of amount is there. And the statistics are that 4 lakh people, farmers in Delhi have outstanding loan of 82,000 crore. Government of Punjab has 23 lakh farmers have a amount of 85,000 crores. So my question for the panel is, don't you think when the question is discussed is the country needs an agricultural policy, then we need to know who is the farmer in the country? Because some people are taking advantage of agriculture in such a manner that such statistics are revealed now, 75 years after that.
Right. So if I can sum up the 4 questions, one is on exports. Obviously, that's an observation. Second is from the lady that we are a food surplus nation, but we are slipping down the hunger index. Third is from is cocoa and way to diversify. And fourth is do we actually know who is a real farmer? So Dr. Chand, I think who is a real farmer is your question. And also hunger index, you have done a proper research on that, I understand.
I think the question of real farmer came because some of the benefit which are meant for genuine farmer, they are siphoned off by those who own land but they have other sources of income also. So these are problem of any definition that you bring. You see, like I don't know whether you consider Ajay ji as a farmer or not. But he owns land, he undertakes cultivation, but he is a millionaire also. So he may not require interest subvention, he can afford to do business on normal kind of rent, but he qualifies on all those kind of things. So the point which you are making is that a few farmers are getting much more institutional credit, and it is much more than say, but 50 farmer get in Punjab, 1 farmer in Delhi get it. Yes. You see, it is not for farming. Delhi, they might have set up some agro kind of activity which is classified in the agriculture category. Like if you have a dairy farmer and you are having 100 buffalo, one good buffalo these days cost you at least 1.5 lakh. So you calculate how much is the cost. That may be more than the loan which is needed by 100 farmers. So, in and around Delhi, whatever agriculture activity is being done, it is more or less this kind of activity, and for which they are taking loan, yes, and per farmer it turns out to be very high.
And the hunger index question?
Hunger index, madam, can I address your question on hunger index? Yeah. You see, first of all, hunger index is a misnomer. Even before joining Niti Yoga, I have written on it. Earlier, International Food Policy Research Institute used to be one of the party to that index. But then I wrote to the then DG that this is not a hunger index. You are taking average of 3 things. One of those is, of course, percent of people who are undernourished. Other 2 are children stunted, children wasted, all those kind of things. So in that index, they are giving a weightage of 70% to children and 30% to rest of the population. There were serious limitation, and because of that, if we withdrew from that, there is a private agency which is publishing it, there are serious limitation of it. We have taken this matter even with FAO, that the norm which you are using, it require a reconsideration and it is being reconsidered. And this year report, which they released in April, I was there in Brazil when they released that report, that made big difference to what is the percent of population undernourished in India. So there are measurement kind of
Right.
issues also. And it also depends upon choice of food people have. If you are interested in depth of it, I have a paper in the Nutrition Bulletin of Nutritional Society of India. You type my name and just type India's hunger paradox. You will get more information.
Right,
I
and-
can't explain it
and
in
if I can
2-3
end with
minutes.
Ajay, the cocoa question. Cocoa is an option to diversify. Have you looked into that? And means it can be an option to diversify. Obviously, you are a professional farmer. You will be more able to.
No, I don't want to be, I don't want to respond to Ramesh Chandji saying that I'm a farmer from Punjab or respond that if I'm a farmer or not. I don't want to be lulled away from the topic of discussion, and nor do I want to address the cocoa question because it's too small for me. What I want to address is India's food security. We need, what are the principles on which India is thinking? Is it thinking in terms of food security? I mean, food self-sufficiency, that हमने सब कुछ अपना ही उगाना है. This is this whole आत्मनिर्भर thing कि हमने सब कुछ अपना उगाना है. As a farmer, I think we should be looking at strategic autonomy, not at food self-sufficiency. कि हम सब कुछ नहीं उगा सकते हैं, चाहे कुछ भी करें. You know, till you don't have your principles right, you're not going to get your policy, you're not going to get your policies right, you're not going to have the implementation right. The other question I want to answer, which could also be related to cocoa, is export of high value produce. The problem is not that you can't export. I think so. We will have to be learned to be competitive to export, not depend on government subsidies. It's not possible. ठीक है ना, हम तो खुद ही मांग रहे हैं सरकार से पैसा. अब आपके लिए कहाँ से मांगेंगे पैसा? पहले खुद के लिए मांग रहे हैं. Question is of non-tariff barriers that the West will impose on a high value produce like chilies. कि उसमें कोई कलर डाल देता है, उसमें पेस्टिसाइड रेजिड्यूज आ जाते हैं, and that problem cannot be solved because it's a state subject. Because
Right.
the states are giving extension services, they have to deploy human resources. They don't deploy because 60-40 जो centrally sponsored schemes हैं, उसके अंदर state को 40% डालना है. But what do states do? They don't hire more people, they don't pay better salaries to people, extension services.
Right.
They prefer making roads, they prefer making bridges, they prefer making statues. उसमें commission मिलता है ये contractor से. तो कोई human resources पे लगाता नहीं है.
Right,
We'll
well,
always face non-tariff
yes.
barriers because of that.
Right, we're absolutely running out of time. I'll thank all the three panelists, starting with Dr. Ramesh Chand, Dr. Shekhar, Ajay, and if you can just come in front of all three of you.